Any thoughts, any ideas, any concerns?
Yes, I have an idea, Robert.
Go for it, Robert.
There has been a man, his name is Edward de Bono, and he was a medical doctor. I think he had 2 PhDs in biology and medicine, and he is well known for the wide series of books he published on what he termed lateral thinking. So I've never read actually a book by him, but I know of him, and he suggests to always scrutinize statements and problems and to find alternative solutions or new ways of looking at things that other people haven't attempted yet.
Yeah.
Almost for the sake of doing it, just to challenge existing frameworks and concepts.
Yeah.
And in his books, I mean, he published 10 or 20 books on this topic, and he actually describes or recommends certain techniques to train your brain in thinking outside of the box. I think that's also the term he used for his approach. So it might be a good source of reading in addition to scientific literature.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I'm sharing. You should see my Google page here, and if you look up Edward de Bono, yeah, there he comes up, and this one particular, 6 thinking hats. So he's all about creative thinking, and he has this thing called 6 thinking hats that I'm pulling up onto the screen, and each of them is a different color. And you physically can wear a hat of a different color, or just imagine. But when you have a particular hat on, then you think in a different way. So I'm just trying to remember what they are. So here, the blue hat is for metacognition, or overall organization or thinking process. The white hat is for gathering neutral information. The red hat is for emotions. The black hat is for criticism. The yellow hat is for positive feedback. The green hat is for new creative ideas. So it's trying to shape your thinking in a particular way. So, you know, when you've got the black hat on, you're being critical. When you've got I've forgotten all the colors now, but you know, those are ways of trying to help you be creative. Thanks, Robert. That was very useful. So definitely lots of material with Edward de Bono. All right, I'll go back to my presentation then. So number 2, remember in the list of 3 things here, number 2 is a good fit. Now, I've already introduced this into the thinking, but it needs repeating. Why is fit important, or what is fit? Fit is alignment. Alignment, fitting in with your funder's needs. Okay? Understanding what the funder wants and adapting your proposal, tuning your proposal to fit in with that. So remember, we talked about directed research, and this is where it's directing you. You're having to change your application to fit the funder's needs. So you've got to make sure that there's alignment. You know, maybe I should change the word fit to alignment, good alignment with your proposal and the funder's needs. Okay, so here's an example. This first one has gone away, so I'll focus on this. Here's a funder called the DG Murray Trust. It's based here in South Africa, based in Cape Town, and they fund projects for social good. And on their website, where they call for funding opportunities, the call document as we call it, they say this: before applying for funding, please familiarize yourself with our strategic interests. So they're telling you up front, understand what we're trying to do. We've got this money and we're trying to make a difference with it. Your proposal must align, must fit with our strategic interests. So now, you know, be honest with yourself. When you wrote your grant proposals before, I'm sure you thought a lot about what you needed and what your research needed and what your research would do, and maybe didn't give too much thought for what the funder wanted. And that's a fundamental problem. So you've got to align and tune your proposal to meet the funder's needs. Okay? Now, the other thing you need to remember is that decisions are done on the balance of risk and reward. So when a funder makes a decision, he or she balances risk and reward. So what is the risk? Risk is associated with investing in your research with no return. Nothing positive, nothing comes out of it. Either because it doesn't match my needs, or the research project fails, or it's not completed, or whatever. That is the risk. And of course, when you make an investment into building a new residence, outside my office window here, I can see 2 residences being built in Jorrison Street. So somebody's put up a lot of money, and they'll hope they'll get that money back, but they're taking a risk, and they measure or weigh out the risk versus the reward. Now, funders do the same. Of course, the reward, the return on the investment, might not be their money back. Industry, they would probably want their money back, but the Bill and Melinda Gates or the NRF doesn't want its money back, but they want something in return, as we said. And it could be something fairly intangible like new knowledge, trained students, capable researchers. But that is the reward they're looking for. And they need to see these two in the proposal to make that fit good, that alignment good. So it's important for you to write your proposal in such a way to minimize the risk and to show the excellent return that you're likely to give them. So the question is it worth it? That looks like a dollar bill. So that's about 15 Rand and that mousetrap. Is it worth getting your fingers trapped to get that dollar bill out? Well, you've got to weigh up the risk and the reward. A scratched finger for 15 Rand. Is it worth it? Well, only you can tell. So think when you write your proposal to reduce the risk of it not succeeding. How do you do that? Well, you can demonstrate your track record of delivery. Make it clear that you've done this type of research before. Okay? Demonstrate your track record. What happens if you don't have a track record? So many of you are on probation, so you're starting out your careers. How do you demonstrate a track record then? Well, one way is to collaborate with people that do have track records. So that reassures me that you have a good chance of success. Then this one, plan carefully. And this is going to come up repeatedly. The more clearly and thoroughly that you plan and demonstrate in your planning, in your proposal, the more confidence I have as a funder that this will happen. So for me, this is the key element that I've seen in so many proposals. It's a good idea, it's really novel, but the plan is just so fuzzy or so complicated or so weak that, hey, I'm not going to risk money in that. Hey, will it actually come about? I don't know. All right. And then also be careful. Do not promise excessively. To try and reduce the risk, you promise, we'll cover everything. We'll do it all. But the more you promise and the more unrealistic it starts to sound, the greater the risk becomes. So don't promise excessively. And then to increase the reward on the other side of the equation, identify the deliverables really clearly. So those deliverables are what comes out of your research. Now, it might be a publication, but it could be, a solution to a problem that industry partner wants. Whatever they want, you must make sure your research has the potential to deliver on that. So if it's the Gauteng Education Department and they want a method to ensure equality in government-funded schools, you've got to come up with a method of doing that for them. Okay, you've got to make that deliverable very clear. focusing on the funder's needs, very, very important. And then here, describe your track record. Okay, it comes up twice, but it's so, so very important. So think about that, the risk and the reward. Reduce the risk and increase the reward. Let me pause there for a moment. Everybody on board? Any thoughts on those? There's a hand, yeah. Brendan?
I just wanted to know, so if you are like an up-and-coming academic and you don't have that track record, could you refer to like your supervisors or to use their names in some way to help bolster?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So best that it's a formal sort of collaboration, that you're working with your past supervisor, your postdoc host or whatever. Absolutely. Put that down. You know, a team, even though you're the PI leading it and writing the grant, a team of experienced people always helps. So definitely, Brandon, that helps. So yeah. Just be careful when you collaborate with folk. Always be very specific what they're going to do and how it'll contribute to the project. So sometimes people end up doing name dropping. You know what I mean by name dropping? When they say, you know, this physics project is going to be enhanced by the contribution made by Albert Einstein. Now, everybody knows Albert Einstein is a brilliant physicist, but he's not so productive these days. So you know, it's not about name dropping. There must be a specific role. So your supervisor, professor, whatever, will contribute in this process, in this part, you know, be specific. Yeah.
Thank you. I have something to add, Robin. I think the track record of delivery is very important because a good indicator of future performance is, of course, past performance. That's something that is often said about shares. I think it cannot be underestimated. I wouldn't be too sure if listing or nominating your supervisor is a great idea, because there's obviously an immediate conflict of interest. Your supervisor would always make sure that he presents you in the best possible light. So I think other collaborators that are not, you know, personally involved with you are a much better choice.
You're quite right, Robert. Also, Brandon, what Robert is saying is entirely true, because as an early career academic, you're trying to establish your own niche, your own reputation, and one of the challenges is to move away from the as they say, you work in the shadow of your supervisor, to move away from that and be independent. But you know, when you're very early on, you know, if you've just finished your PhD or you're still working towards your PhD, you know, it's acceptable to have your supervisor. But Robert's entirely correct. You do want to branch out. You want to bring new people in, develop collaborations. You know, that's why we go to conferences, share our work, but also to meet people and start establishing collaborations. Especially today, in today's research world, seldom can you do it all yourself. You really need to work with other people. You know, if you bring in a digital angle and you're not particularly good at, you know, data science or something like that, and you know, digital data are all over the place. Even in the humanities, when you record somebody's interview, there's a digital data. So how can you make the most of that? So, you know, these collaborations are very, very important. Okay, cool. Let me carry on. Back to the presentation. So balance of risk and reward. And then the third one, remember we've had idea, fit, and plan. Now, the plan I mentioned before, planning is vital. The better the work plan is presented, the better your chances of success. Why? Because it reduces the risk, the anxiety that this project won't happen. I remember being at the NRF and getting some really fantastic projects, but the work plans were so complicated and so intertwined and so difficult to understand, obscure or dense or whatever the word is, the reviewers would just give up after a while. They couldn't crack it and understand it. And then they would just say, no, I don't think we should fund this. So I can't emphasize this more. All right, and then, so what does a plan look like? Well, a plan must have these elements of time, okay, when it will be done, how long it will take, and can it be completed in the allocated time. So this is what your reviewer will be doing. If you're going to say that you're going to, I don't know, sample, take from Robert's field, he works in geology, geoscience, and he's going to take core rock samples. Robert, I'm not sure if I'm in the right space for you, but let's say we do this, and he's going to take 1 million core rock samples from across the world and we're going to do it by July. It's almost impossible to do all of that. And then he's going to analyze each of them using a mass spectrometer. There's going to be so many samples, they'll never be able to do it in that time. So you've got to present a time that is reasonable. Resources. Are the necessary facilities, equipment available? Is there access to documents, archival material, study population, whatever? So resources, think very broad. It's not just about equipment. So let's take education research. You've got to have access to children or access to teachers. You've got to have access to schools. That's your resource. Do you have those resources available? And when you put your proposal together, you need to have evidence of those resources. So let's say that school example, you should have a letter from the school, the school that the head teacher of that school, yes, granting you access, or is it the Gauteng Education Department, or if it's a private school, I guess it's the head teacher or whatever. That's the type of stuff, evidence available to say that you have the resources. And then the last one, expertise.
Robin,
yeah.
Can I just ask a question? So when it comes to resources from the education perspective, when you're doing your proposal, do you need to have your ethics clearance done before that and GDE permission done? All
right. So yeah, good question. So for those that need ethics, in the health science and the social sciences, ethics clearance, if before the research, before the proposal, is the best first prize. Yes, I've got it. Here is my certificate. Here is my clearance certificate. But it's not always possible, Zarina. So sometimes it's necessary just to say, I'm applying for ethics. The date of my ethics committee is, and I'll get my decision after that. So whatever evidence you can say to show how that either you have a clearance already, that's very powerful. But if you haven't, that you actually, you don't want to say something vague, I will apply for ethics clearance in due course. That's just too vague. You need to be more specific. Remember, you've got to run faster than that Okie and the bear. So I am applying on such and such a date. And all those dates are in the calendar. You can always ask me. I can give you the dates of all the HREC non-medical. So, I can give you those dates. I can give you the name of the chair of the committee meeting and all of that sort of detail that you need to add. Go for it, Robert.
Yeah, so I think what helped me personally in the past is before you actually submit your proposal, I think it's very helpful to actually have done some preliminary work, like a pilot study or so, of limited extent, where you can actually demonstrate to the assessors that, yes, you have already started, the method works, it's promising, more work needs to be done, I've got already preliminary data, perhaps I have already presented at the conference, but much more work needs to be done to make it a full proposal or project. And thereby you demonstrate that, yes, you know what you're doing, you've got the expertise, you've got the instruments, the infrastructure, and you're heading in the right direction already. And you want to do much more because you can deliver much more.
Brilliant, brilliant. Absolutely. That goes a long way to reducing the risk because, as you say, you've already tested the methodology and we have preliminary data that is very exciting in the sense that when we get the full data set, we'll really improve our understanding. Yeah, thanks, Robert. Brilliant. Lovely.